sometimes it's not just a weapon system, it's rather a tactic or a strategy, or how you use your forces in various maneuver warfare, of which a true master was Napoleon, who came up with the concept of dividing, instead of having just one pitched battle in which you gathered 20, 30 or 40,000 men and you fought it out with the enemy. It would be a good idea to separate them into what later became known as the core system. So you would have a couple of hundred or maybe 1,000 men that would travel together for some kilometers, and then they would strike the enemy, create confusion about where the main force would strike, and then at some point they would all converge together and strike an opponent who wasn't ready for that. So these and a component of it was, of course, also general conscription. That was also an invention of Napoleonic warfare. And in general, the situation with Napoleon is also a bit interesting and comparable to the war in Ukraine today. We have a war in which, even though the Ukrainians are the only ones fighting, they are supplied by more than 50 countries. There is a vast alliance that is backing the Ukrainians. We can see it at these various Ramstein meetings that take place usually every month, sometimes a little bit less frequent. For example, a few days ago, the Danes announced that they will spend their complete military budget for this year on providing or creating a new fund from which they will either buy weapons for the Ukrainians, or that they will use their own weapons from this fund. So here we have a country that is very small. 4 or 5 million people live in Denmark. It hasn't been viewed as a military player, so to say, at least since they lost the war against Prussia in the mid-19th century. Naturally, when Hitler invaded during the Second World War, the Danes simply realized that the disparity between the forces was simply too big, and they gave up immediately.
Pretty quickly, almost. It sounds very unkind to say, almost more quickly than the French. But yes. I suppose the military strength and position of the two countries was radically different.
Yes, the Norwegians, at least, also having no land border with Germany, it was a little bit easier for them to withstand the German assault, at least for more than a month. But the Danes knew that they stood no chance, and now all of a sudden the Danes declare that they have sent their 19 French Caesar 8x8 self-propelled howitzers, one of the most modern weapon systems there is in the world, and clearly a significant reinforcement of Ukraine's artillery or howitzer capabilities. And now the Danes declared that they will send even more. So when you have countries such as Denmark, and then you have countries such as the Baltic states that also practically spent 1.5% of their entire GDP on providing financial or military aid to Ukraine, it sounds very small, but when you take all of these countries taken together, and then you add backing by countries such as Poland that had large quantities of Soviet-era heavy military equipment, such as tanks, multiple launch rocket systems, air defense systems, and infantry fighting vehicles, many of which, such as the PT-91 Tvarde tanks, had been modernized in the 90s and early 2000s and received modern optics. This is all very significant aid. And then, of course, you have Great Britain and the US providing also very modern weapons in large quantities. So we have a situation in which the Russians, they are probably receiving some artillery shells from North Korea. They are receiving these suicide drones from Iran. But other than that, they are quite lonely on the world stage when it comes to receiving military aid. And of course, here with Napoleon, we had a similar situation in which he was deemed so dangerous, so aggressive, that basically all the other powers of that time united against him.
Adam, alas, the clock in the corner of the studio is calling time on our discussion, so if we'll pick it up next time. There we are. I've had to interrupt Adam almost in mid-sentence, but fear not, if you join us next time on Poland Daily History, as we hope you will, we'll pick up the story. In the meantime, thank you for watching.